All right. Last but not least, I'm going to go over what your homework is and introduce Project 1. So every week we have an assignment which is sort of more technical exercise, and then we have over the course of the semester 3 projects that are a little bit more fun and creative. So first off, our homework, go up to assignment descriptions, and while I'm doing that, just a reminder that under shared resources, we have all of these handouts that you need to be looking at for the stuff that we're talking about in class. So the videos are there, the videos go through these things, but the handouts are really important. They hit the same material. They are something that you can look at your own pace a little bit more easily, I think, than the videos. Hopefully the two things together will help you get the material. So assignment descriptions. Let's come up here to Assignment 2. All right. So for Assignment 2, you're going to need 2 photographs, a head shoulders picture of a person, and some kind of colorful background. Right? Could be a photograph that you took on a vacation, like whatever it is, fun, exciting background color thing. The portrait can be something that you shot recently, last year, whatever, but it needs to be a, full resolution, not a phone picture, head and shoulders, portrait, straight ahead kind of thing. And it needs to have something that you need to retouch out. So that can be like, okay, like some skin blemishes, whatever, but you need to do enough retouching that it is sort of noticeable and just like meaningful, right? Don't be like, oh, look, I got rid of one little thing, I'm done. So take those 2 images, put them in Lightroom, bring them into Photoshop as layers, right? We talked about how to do that in the compositing video. Or you can open both of them in Photoshop separately and simply select all, copy, go to the other one, and paste. That's another option. But loading them as layers is probably a little bit easier. You want them to be a 16-bit file in ProPhoto RGB color space, right? As it's going from Lightroom into Photoshop. They should be named, the person layer and the background layer, named in some kind of rational way. Erase whatever the background is behind the person, right? And then put that colorful background shot below their layer. So it would be the person, and then behind them, whatever the colorful background image is. Do a good job, right? It's assignment, you're getting graded. Not getting paid, but getting graded. Make a separate layer for retouching and retouch out some sort of blemishes on the person. Now, if you don't have a portrait that you want to use, in the files for this week, there are those 2 headshots with the word demo all over them. You can totally use those. That is absolutely fine for this. Double check your things are well organized and named. When you're done, save the file so it's back in Lightroom, and then, right, open that file in Photoshop and do a save as to make a layered PSD per the sort of naming conventions below. It's really important that you do that save as from Photoshop. If you export from Lightroom, right, the way that we would export a JPEG or something, if you export it from Lightroom as a PSD, that exporting process is actually going to flatten it. And if you don't have your layers on here, you're not going to get any credit. So do that save as from Photoshop to make that file that you should turn in. The other thing that you're going to turn in is that carpet retouching exercise that we have, where you're touching out touching out, I don't know. Retouching out, there we go. Those little round bits of paper off of that gross ass carpet. And again, remember, retouching on a separate layer, right? Layer order, naming, all that stuff. Save it as a layered PSD and turn that in. Thinking part, right? So much of this class is me yelling at you, me harping at you incessantly about naming your layers and organizing your layers. It is really, really important and will make your life somewhat easier. Also, retouching on a blank layer is so important, right? If you don't do that, you will inevitably screw something up and have to redo a whole bunch of work, or have like permanently screwed up your file. So please do that. Okay, that's it. So you'll turn in those two files, one of which is your composite of the person with the background with some retouching on their face, and the second of which is that carpet exercise. Now, I also wanted to talk a little bit about Project 1. So Project 1, you'll be able to start working on it now, right? It's not due for, I don't know, a couple, 3 weeks. We're making a portrait diptych. So a diptych is a set of two images that work together in some way. All right, let me just show you a couple of examples of what a diptych could be. It's a very small file. So, right, classic Piero del Francesco, right? Is that it? Piero Francesco Rubino. I don't know who these people are. Right, so this is a wedding couple, right? They're painted in a similar style. They have different sort of clothes. The backgrounds are continuous across the two, which is kind of cool, but have different sort of symbologies of who they are. Here's another one, right? Martin Luther and his wife. The people in the painting, not the lady with the gloves. Oops. Some god-awful modern painting. Which is this? This one. One of these is a famous Hollywood celebrity. Right, so the diptychs, both pictures coordinate in some kind of way. They inform each other a little bit. They usually are of people who have some kind of relationship, right? So you're going to be making a diptych, right? So two images, and they're both going to be composite portraits. So each composite portrait must consist of 4 different images, right? So your source material for each one, 4 different images. So 3 to make up the person, and then a 4th one that is the background behind them. You're going to composite using erasure, right? So you're erasing stuff out. You're trying to make the composite convincing, right? So if you're like, oh, like one of these pictures is a narwhal horn, right? That's fine to have a narwhal horn, but you want it to be a convincing narwhal horn. The 2 portraits can have some of the same files as long as you're using different parts of them. Meaning in picture A and picture B, right? Maybe there's like a picture of my mom and a picture of my sister, right? But in one of them, it's my mom's ears and my sister's nose, and in the other one, it's my sister's eyes and my mom's mouth. Right, so you don't want to repeat pieces, but you can use the same source images in both pictures. So, right, should be interesting, might be kind of fun, perhaps it will be amusing. You will need to have some spotting, healing layer in there, right? So some kind of retouching in there. It will need to be on a blank layer. You'll need to have at least one adjustment layer. We haven't talked about those yet, so in the next couple of weeks you'll know what that is. Make sure that you're working from Lightroom, right, so that your composite ends up back in your Lightroom catalog so you don't lose track of it. Non-destructive color and tone editing, right, meaning that we're doing our spotting on a blank layer. Layer naming and organization, really, really important. Name things in a logical and clear way. And again, make sure that you're turning in layered PSDs. If they're not layered, you totally are going to fail. Deliverables, you'll turn in 2 layered 8-bit Adobe RGB 1998 PSDs with all their pixels, right? So don't shrink them down. Sized in Photoshop to fit on 13 by 19 inch paper with a minimum 1 inch white border. Again, that's something we'll talk a little bit more about in a subsequent week, titled like that. We're going to print those on 13 by 19-ish paper. Right, you'll need to have some extra time to be able to make that print. We'll shoot a documentation image of that print. I realize that part is not on here. But yeah, So I'm going to show you a couple of examples that people have done in the past. Let's see. Let me open these up separately. Goodness gracious. That was not what I meant to do. Okay, show you some examples that people have done in the past. So these are two pictures, right? You can see that colorful background behind them, right? There's some eyes, some eyebrows, right? This person does not actually have stubble, nor sort of mustachy looking face. Same thing here, right? I don't think that's their mouth. These are definitely not their eyes. And this may be the backwards looking picture of the torso. I'm not totally sure. But both of them, right, fairly convincing as far as the compositing. In neither case are we like, oh yeah, that's definitely what a real person looks like. But they're pretty good. Another example from, what was last year or the year before? This one I liked because they sort of took the diptych idea and ran with a little bit. So they had sort of like, one is devil, one is the angel, right? So they sort of work together as a pair, and they are combining different facial features, right? So this is sort of one person, but they've got somebody else's eyes, somebody else's mouth on there. Same thing here, different eyes, different eyebrows. And gosh, they've done a fairly good job, so I don't actually remember which bits are which. But there you go. So those are two sort of examples of people working in the form. I think that this is really great, right? It's fairly amusing. We are aiming for something that is sort of plausible looking, but doesn't need to be totally realistic. Yeah, if you have any questions on that, let me know. Go ahead, get started, start collecting images, start shooting images if you need to shoot some images to get the portrait parts. You are going to have a much easier time if you light these different images similarly, right? If you sort of take them from a similar vantage point with a similar focal length, you're going to make all of that compositing so much easier. You cannot take a photograph of somebody like this and a photograph of somebody like that and composite them together, right? The facial features are just never going to work. You can't take something with a very strong directional light and something with a big flat light and composite them together. It will not work. So although it seems pretty simple to just go grab some images, you are going to be much better off if you can photographing the images for the project. It will make your life and the process much, much simpler. So that's project 1. That's not due next week. Due next week is assignment 2. But start working on project 1, start pulling those images, shooting those images, thinking about what you would like to do so you can ask me any questions you might have. Yeah, get started. Cool.